In 2012, you became the chief of chaplains, and under your watch, force shaping occurred. How did that affect the chaplain corps in particular?
Wow. It really began in 2011. Okay. The Budget Control Act of 2011 was a congressional act that is very similar to what they're doing right now. And this is the second week of May in 2023. Members of Congress now are contesting with one another with regard to budget and increasing the federal debt. It was the same in 2011. Contending with one another with the threat of a government shutdown or defaulting on national debt, questions of the 14th Amendment. All of these things came about, and in the Budget Control Act of 2011, I remember this vividly, there would be an agreement that they would extend the debt limit of the United States, but conditional upon $2.4 trillion in future reductions in government spending. The influence of that sequestration of federal funds, $2.4 trillion reduction over the coming 10 years, would have a significant effect upon the future years of defense planning for the military, for all the services, and for all the specialties in each service as that cascades to the Chaplain Corps of the United States Air Force. How would we manage that? At this point, it is essential to express again the significance of relationships. Yes. How the chief of chaplains and the deputy sit with other members of the Air Force Council as they contend with one another for the available funds that are going to be reduced and really frozen at that time, almost at 2008 levels. How will we accomplish our mission at the time to fly, fight, and win in aerospace and cyber? How are we going to accomplish that mission in each of our areas of responsibility? The most significant thing for the chief of chaplains, and I would extend this to any level, any pay grade, to have your elbows on the table in those conversations, to represent your community for us, HC, and what do we need, and to have the viability, the credibility with your siblings there at that level of leadership to represent faithfully, these are things we must have. If we are truly going to be a wartime requirement in the Air Force, in this expression of the military instrument of power, how will the Air Force Chaplain Corps support that mission? Have that information and bring it to the table. But you've got to have your elbows on the table to be credible to begin. That's it. So I would say that to a captain who's at a squadron level, know your commander. Know that commander's mission. And specifically, how will you support it? For me, it became abundantly clear in August of 2012. General Norton Schwartz had been the previous Chief of Staff. He was succeeded by General Mark Welsh, the 20th Chief of Staff of the Air Force. In the midst of this contention of how we're going to support F-35 development, how are we going to support our personnel requirements, and then my little piece, our piece. We're not even part of the program objective memorandum of the entire Air Force because we're not big enough. So we're sort of mendicants and going to get what's left. But having those relationships is exceptionally important at every level. When General Welsh took the helm, took the stick, I should say, of the United States Air Force in August of 2012, he went to each member of the Air Force Council, A1 through A10, of course, people like SG, HC, JA. And instead of having us report to his office, he came to our offices. The first place he went was Operations, A3. The second place he went was HC. If anyone ever knew Mark Welsh, the 20th Chief of Staff, the Chaplain Corps is exceptionally significant to him. And as Chief, then exceptionally significant to the mission of the United States Air Force and now Space Force. He came and he listened to our brief, courteously, respectfully, and we thought we had done a good job. In the room, the Chief of Staff and his executive, it was Scott Ployce at the time, now Lieutenant General. In the room with me was our career field manager, Chief Master Sergeant Al Clemens. The executive of the Chief of Chaplains was Father Tim Butler.
Yes.
Maybe he was the HCX. He was one of those at the time. We gave our brief to him. In response to that, General Welsh looked at me squarely and in a very familiar way said, H, you have a hidden career field. I said, sir. And he said specifically, your chaplain assistants. Then he had Chief Clemens' attention.
Yes.
He said when he speaks to other chiefs, this is the Joint Chiefs level, to combatant commanders, the demand signal in those times of high deployment rates was for Air Force chaplain assistants. That was remarkable to me. He said, your religious support teams, a chaplain and a chaplain assistant in that nomenclature of the time, are coveted by every combatant commander. They want Air Force chaplain religious support teams. And the great news to me was those chaplain assistants. They have the highest educational level in any enlisted AFSC. Did you know that? Wow. I said, I do now, sir. He said, I want you to train like you fight. I want religious support teams doing visitation and ministries in garrison, in training, as they do in deployment. Do you understand? Everyone's going, yes, sir. Never have I received such clear guidance from leadership. That is your most important goal. To integrate those religious support teams to the best extent you possibly can in training environments, in garrison, and ultimately with a view toward the reason we exist as a wartime requirement in deployment. And so I brought that one most significant goal, which is identified, I think, in business literature. They call it the wildly important goal.
Yes, yes.
This was not Howard Stendahl's idea. It wasn't Chief Master Sergeant Al Clemens' idea. It was the Chief of Staff's direction.
Understood.
At that point, it is, yes, sir.
Exactly.
Implement that. And under the kind of the four disciplines of execution, a specific corpus of literature by Chris McChesney, Sean Covey, and others. To implement that most significant goal became the tasker I received from the Chief of Staff. To bring that to a chaplain corps that has a history of 74 years, I think,
Yes,
as of
sir.
today.
As of today, 74 years.
To implement that and say, this is the Chief of Staff, you know, you get sometimes kind of this response. So it was not the immediate darling of every recipient.
This is true.
But this is the direction of the Chief of Staff.
Exactly.
We're going to do so and focus on this wildly important goal.
That's
the
it.
single task that we've been tasked by the Chief of Staff.
Yes, sir.
And that we'll focus in measuring that on kind of what they identify as lead and lag measures. How do we measure that, thirdly?
Exactly.
Because clergy are at times reluctant in areas of empirical verification
True.
of our work. But if you want to get your elbows on the table, if you want to contend for the resources available, you need to be wise as serpents as well as innocent as doves. And to be able to defend, to articulate, and to argue for those who serve with us in uniform.